All right, let's dive into the world of Allie Brosh and Hyperbole and a Half. We've got a stack of her essays ready, those iconic drawings and laugh-out-loud stories. How does Brosh use humor to deal with life? What stands out to you as a key theme?
It's her ability to make us laugh at the things we usually hide. Anxieties, failures, even our darkest moments. Like she's
Mhm.
giving us permission to embrace the absurdity.
Yeah, totally. Hey, life is messy and weird. Sometimes you just gotta laugh. And she starts young. Remember the 4-year-old Brosh and the birthday cake? The god of cake incident?
Oh, yeah.
Hilarious.
That story hints at something deeper, too. Even as a kid, Brosh is battling against rules and expectations. She's a force of nature,
Yeah.
wants things her way, goes to extremes to get them. It's endearing, but it also foreshadows her later struggles, depression and self-perception.
So true. Trying to scare her mom out of the woods with Texas Chainsaw Massacre details. 8 years old. Elaborate scheme. Like she can control reality with her imagination.
Hmm.
Hasn't grasped the boundaries of what's possible.
I think that's a really important point. That struggle to control reality, bend the world to her will, recurring theme. Something a lot of people can relate to. Anxiety and self-doubt. We try to present this perfect image, control how people perceive us. But life throws curveballs, and that's where the humor comes in.
For sure. Speaking of curveballs, the hot sauce challenge. Starting a food challenge at 8 years old.
Wow.
Takes guts, or maybe just no awareness of how her body works. Classic Brush.
Even in that story, she's clearly in pain. But there's this sense that she's already crafting a persona, the hot sauce savant, but secretly dying inside. Humor as a shield.
If I can make you laugh, you won't notice I'm falling apart.
And that tendency to use humor as a coping mechanism, even more apparent when we look at her adult life, her experiences with depression.
Right. Brosh's writing about depression is raw and honest, but she still finds humor. She describes depression as a meaningless fog, captures that feeling of emptiness and detachment. Yeah, so relatable. Even if you haven't experienced depression, you can feel that sense of being lost, unable to connect. And then there's the story about the overdue video rentals, a turning point, not some grand epiphany, just the absurdity pushing her towards action. Have you ever felt like that?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's the smallest, most ridiculous things that snap us out of a funk.
Absolutely. That's part of what makes Brosh's work so powerful. She finds humor in the mundane, everyday struggles that we all face. Like she's saying, hey, life might be a mess, but we're all in this together. We might as well laugh about it.
And she's not afraid to get really real about those struggles. Like the part where she talks about finding a tiny piece of corn under the fridge, bursting into uncontrollable laughter.
Yeah.
Such a small detail,
Yeah.
but it speaks volumes about finding tiny sparks of joy, even in depression.
It's like that corn becomes a symbol of hope, a reminder that even in dark times, there are still things that make us laugh. Beautiful and surprisingly profound.
Okay, let's move on to something a little lighter. Dogs. Brosh's essays about her dogs are pure comedic genius. The simple dog who can't even figure out stairs. And then the helper dog who seems to hate everything and everyone. Hilarious embodiments of chaos.
They really are. It's interesting how Brosh uses these personalities to explore complex themes. The simple dog represents this pure, naive acceptance of the world, while the helper dog embodies the constant struggle against it.
That they represent two sides of Brosh's personality. The
Yeah.
part that wants to go with the flow,
Yeah.
and the part that's constantly battling the absurdity.
Exactly. And through their antics, Brosh highlights the challenges of loving something different, something you can't fully control. How many times has she tried to train those dogs? They completely ignore her and do their own thing, learning to let go of expectations and embrace the chaos.
And she's doing it with humor. Makes it all feel less overwhelming.
Right. I mean, who else would try to train their dog to run an obstacle course and end up timing themselves crawling through it on all fours?
Okay, that was a little weird, even for Brosh. But it's that willingness to poke fun at herself, to find the humor in her own failures. That makes her so relatable.
And I think it's important to note that Brosh isn't just using humor to deflect from pain or to make light of serious issues. She's using it to connect with readers, to create a sense of shared experience. She's saying, hey, I'm struggling too, and it's okay to laugh about it.
It's like she's creating a space for us to be vulnerable without feeling ashamed. And speaking of vulnerability, remember that part where she talks about wanting to run across a park after surgery just to prove she's okay?
Oh, yeah. Perfect example of what we were talking about. That struggle to control her reality, to project strength, even when she's feeling anything but trying to outrun her own vulnerability. And of course, it backfires hilariously.
It's like she's trying to convince herself and everyone else that she's not affected by pain or weakness. But the humor comes from the fact that we all know she's human. We all know she's hurting, and it's okay to admit that.
Exactly. And by sharing those moments of vulnerability, even the ones that make her look ridiculous, she's actually empowering us to do the same. She's showing us that it's okay to not be okay. And that sometimes the best way to deal with difficult emotions is to find the humor in them. That brings us to the dog's guide to understanding basic concepts. One of my favorite parts of the book. Brosh takes all those little things about dogs that drive us crazy, turns them into this brilliant commentary on the human condition.
Like, why are dogs so obsessed with digging holes? What do they think they're going to find? It's like they live in a parallel universe where logic has no meaning.
Exactly. And it's not just holes, it's their inability to grasp. No, their bizarre obsession with fairness. Like they're constantly challenging our understanding of the world, forcing us to question our own
And
assumptions.
she's not just making fun of dogs, she's using their behavior to reflect on our own struggles.
Mhm.
Like when she talks about dogs not understanding no, she's also talking about our tendency to ignore boundaries, to push limits even when it leads to bad consequences.
Right. Hey, maybe we can learn from these furry little chaos agents. Maybe we need to embrace that dog-like spontaneity, that willingness to just go with the flow, not get caught up in the rules.
Maybe we can. Have you ever met a dog who stresses about paying bills on time?
True. But speaking of chaos, let's talk about the helper dog's hatred for the neighbor's dog.
Oh, yeah.
This isn't just dislike, it's an existential threat.
It exists solely to torment her. It doesn't even have to be there. She can sense it, like
What?
some kind of canine Voldemort.
Right.
Some things in life you just can't escape. But it's also about finding a way to coexist with those things, even when they drive you crazy.
Absolutely. Finding a way to love something, even when it's frustrating, when it makes you question your sanity. A powerful message. And for anyone who's struggled with difficult relationships, whether with a pet, family member, or even themselves.
Okay, one more dog story. The Booties.
The sled dog booties, a desperate attempt to protect those floors. Canine melodrama worthy of Shakespeare. The simple dog frozen in confusion, the helper dog flopping around like a dying fish, convinced her world is ending.
It's pure gold. But it also speaks to this larger theme of change and adaptation. Brosh and Duncan move to a new place. The dogs have to adjust. They do eventually, just like Brosh adjusts to adulthood and mental health.
It's a reminder that even the most difficult transitions, the most overwhelming changes, can be navigated. Maybe not gracefully, maybe with a lot of flailing and whining, but we get there. We adapt.
And sometimes that adaptation involves a lot of humor.
Yeah.
What else are you going to do when faced with a dog wearing booties, looking like she's about to stage a tragedy?
You have to find the humor, otherwise we go crazy. That's something Brosh does so well. Shows us that it's okay to laugh at the absurdity, even when things are tough.
Speaking of tough, let's talk about Brosh's essay, This is Why I'll Never Be an Adult. Who hasn't had that moment? Trying to adult so hard, you burn yourself out, end up face down in nachos.
Right. The beauty of that essay, Brosh captures that cycle perfectly. Overambition, guilt, and eventual rebellion. So many of us experience it. She sets these lofty goals, cleaning, bills, becoming a master chef, overwhelmed by it
It's
all.
like that scene, her capacity for responsibility, a
Mhm.
finite resource. When she exceeds it, she crashes.
Yes. This hilarious but oddly profound metaphor for the limits of willpower. We set ourselves up for failure by trying to do too much. We think we have to be perfect. Then we feel defeated.
And the guilt sets in, and it's all downhill from there. But even in those moments of self-sabotage, Brosh finds a way to laugh at herself. She doesn't dwell in shame. She embraces the absurdity.
You think she's teaching us a valuable lesson. Be kind to ourselves, accept that we're not perfect. Find the humor in our mistakes. We all have those nacho moments. It's okay to laugh.
Okay, before we move on, we have to talk about the goose. Who knew geese could be so menacing?
Right, they're supposed to be cute, not break into your house and terrorize you.
But that's what makes this story so great. Brosh takes this mundane encounter, turns it into an epic battle of wills, a Jurassic Park struggle for survival against a feathered dinosaur.
The visual of her and Duncan, armed with a comforter, trying to trap the goose. Pure comedic gold.
But it's also about facing your fears, even when those fears are irrational, even when they involve a rogue goose with a vendetta.
And sometimes those fears turn out to be more real than we expect.
Okay, one last thing. The toy parrot.
Oh, the toy parrot, a weapon of mass annoyance.
The image of Brosh and her brother driving their parents crazy. Too good.
But it also highlights this playful exploration of boundaries, this desire to test the limits. They know they're going to get in trouble, but they can't help themselves. That mischievousness in all of us, that urge to poke at the rules, just to see what happens.
And sometimes what happens is hilarious. Speaking of testing boundaries, I think it's interesting how Brosh explores that theme in her writing about thoughts and feelings. Like that part where she talks about wanting to run across the park after surgery. It's like she's trying to prove something, not just to everyone else, but to herself.
It goes back to that idea of control. She's trying to dictate her reality, to project this image of strength and resilience, even when she's in pain, vulnerable.
Right, like she thinks if she acts a certain way, she can control how she feels, but it doesn't work out that way. Have you ever felt that, like trying to put on a brave face, but deep down you're struggling?
Oh, absolutely. I
Yeah.
think we all have those moments where we try to project a certain image, to mask our insecurities, our vulnerabilities. But what Brosh does, she shows us the humor in that struggle. She lets us laugh at those moments where we're trying too hard, pretending to be something we're not. And it gives us permission to just be ourselves, flaws and all.
That's what makes her writing so powerful. Not afraid to be honest about her struggles, even the ones that make her look silly, like her essay Thoughts and Feelings. That internal battle with her ego and her shitty thoughts.
It's like she's giving us a glimpse inside her mind. Hilarious and relatable. We all have that inner critic, that voice telling us we're not good enough. Brosh gives us a language to talk about that, a way to laugh at those negative thoughts instead of letting them consume us.
It's like she's saying, hey, I have those thoughts too. And they're ridiculous. Let's not take them so seriously.
Exactly. She's not trying to offer solutions or pretend those thoughts don't exist. She's acknowledging them. But she's also finding a way to detach from them, to see them as these absurd little gremlins messing with her.
And that's a really valuable lesson. We can't always control our thoughts, but we can control how we react. We can choose to engage with them, let them control us, or we can laugh at them, see them for what they are, just thoughts.
It's like choosing to focus on that corn under the fridge instead of the overwhelming mess of life.
That's a great analogy. So as we wrap up this deep dive into Allie Brosh, what are some key takeaways we can apply?
I think the biggest takeaway is the power of humor as a coping mechanism. Brosh shows us it's okay to laugh at ourselves, to find the absurdity in our struggles. Doesn't mean we're ignoring the pain or the challenges. It means we're choosing to find joy, even in the midst of it all.
And I think another takeaway is vulnerability and authenticity. Brosh doesn't shy away from sharing her flaws. And it creates a space for us to do the same, reminds us that we're not alone in our struggles, and that it's okay to not have it all figured out.
I love that. Brosh's humor isn't about making light of serious issues. It's about finding a way to cope with them, to connect with others, and to remind ourselves that even in dark times, there's room for laughter.
Beautifully said. Allie Brosh finds humor in everything. From childhood cake theft to the complexities of adulthood, what seemingly insignificant things in your life could be viewed through that lens.
Give yourself permission to laugh at it all. And remember, you're not alone. Until next time, keep diving deep here.